You're listening to a podcast from Faith Baptist Church of Winter Haven, Florida. Our purpose is to worship God and equip believers to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you'd like more information, please visit faithbaptistwh.org.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's so good to see you guys again. Well, last Wednesday, I was informed just before we met that Charlie Kirk had been shot and killed. And that was right before I got up here in the pulpit last Wednesday. So, honestly, I knew that I was going to need some time to process that. And, I'm still learning how to be slow to speak and quick to listen. As someone who has been very interested in apologetics, giving a defense for the faith, and sharing my faith with others, I loved hearing Charlie share the gospel at his church, campus events, rather. He was unafraid and unashamed to explain that he was a born-again believer. He was sure to make that apparent, and he was happy to provide a reason for the hope that was within him. He did a great job at that. Over the last week, we've certainly seen what effect Charlie had, especially over 16 to 35-year-olds. I think that's been a key demographic that we've been seeing respond to this. I've been having lots of conversations with people both in our church and outside our church, and I've been thrilled to see lots of young Christian men in particular who are now more interested in learning about theology. They're more interested in learning about apologetics and evangelism and how to share their faith. They want to get involved and talk to others about their beliefs now. In fact, in a recent Barna survey, we are actually starting to see more Gen Z attending church more frequently than my millennials. Praise the Lord. That's awesome. Gen Z is starting to come to church, and they care about substance. They don't want surface level. They want to dig into the reasons for why you believe what you believe. Now, when someone influential gets killed and their voice gets silenced, it can bring on a whole host of emotions, can't it? Especially if you are filling your mind with every minor news update that hits the feed, right? But as the book of Ecclesiastes said back in chapter 1, there is nothing new under the sun. Every day there are Christians being killed for what they believe. All throughout history, in every country, people have been murdering each other over what they think ever since Cain and Abel. This is nothing new. So I trust that today's passage will be an encouragement to all of us in this regard. We are going to be studying the first half of chapter 3, and it's another one of Ecclesiastes' longest chapters. So we're going to be splitting it up to give ourselves some more time to just walk through it slowly. But I hope that you'll agree with me how relevant this chapter seems to be for us this week. I see just this being a of God timing that we are studying Ecclesiastes, the vanity of life, today. So, could I have a volunteer read verses 1 through 15 from the New King James, and then I'll ask for a volunteer to read from the CSB. Anybody want to do the New King James? All right.
To everything there is a reason, or a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit has the worker from that in which he labors? I have seen the God-given task which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives. And also every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken from it. God does it, that men should fear before him that which has already been, and what is to be has already been, and God requires an account of what is past.
Could I have a volunteer read the CSB, which we'll have on the screen? Eve.
There is an occasion for everything, and a time for every activity under heaven, a time to give birth and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to avoid embracing, a time to search and a time to count as lost, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What does the worker gain from his struggles? I have seen the task that God has given the children of Adam to keep them occupied. He has made everything appropriate in his time. He has also put eternity in their hearts, but no one can discover the work God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and enjoy the good life. It is also the gift of God whenever anyone eats, drinks, and enjoys all his efforts. I know that everything God does will last forever. There is no adding to it or taking from it. God works so that the people will be in awe of him. Whatever is has already been, and whatever will be already is. However, God seeks justice for the persecuted.
All right, so to start our discussion, let's start from a zoomed out perspective. Can you find any patterns or structures that emerges from this text? There could also be some evidence of some numeric symbolism here. So bonus points if you can figure that out. That's a tough one. Yes. Okay, yep, we see a time to, right? That's a very clear pattern here. A time to gets repeated a lot. What else? I'm sorry? Okay, anything else? Yep. God has a time for anything and everything to do. Yep, I love that, the verse 11. He has made everything appropriate in its time. I actually prefer the New King James Version on that. It just feels more beautiful. He's made everything beautiful in its time. I think that captures a more full sense of that word appropriate. Like it's good. It's not just appropriate, but it's good and called for. Yeah, what else? Yes. There's 14 a time force. Yes, that is our symbolism. Does anybody know why that's important? 7, all right. The number of completion. Here's what the NIV application commentary says on this. If there is any structure to this chapter, it most likely lies in the fact that the list of opposites is made up of 28 items in 14 pairs. This means that the list is comprised of multiples of 7, the number that symbolizes perfection in the Bible. It is a skillful way of, again, emphasizing the totality of things that are contained within any human life. This is a complete summary of the seasons of life. Yeah, so there's our numeric symbolism there. That's a hard one to spot. Yeah. Any other patterns, structures, themes that emerge from this text? Yeah. So new and old. So a time to give birth and a time to die. You're saying those are opposites. Yep. Does that theme carry on through all that list? Okay. Yep. A time to keep and throw away also seems new and old. I mean, does this also work to say good, bad? Jeremiah? You say yeah? Yeah, you're certainly seeing some opposites here, right? And one, like a time to kill, that seems bad, and a time to heal, that seems good, right? So there seems to be that opposite of good, bad, but then there also seems to be some that just don't make sense in that. Like, is a time to search good? Okay. A time to embrace and a time to avoid embracing, a time to love and hate. Yeah, there does seem to be some good, bad opposites here. Kayla? Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because that Hebrew word is actually it's the word for kill and not murder. And there is a distinction in the Hebrew. So there's a good time to kill, and there's a distinction from murder, killing somebody who doesn't deserve to be killed. Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and we see this, I think, right away in verse 2. The fact that he says there's a time for every activity under heaven. He's saying everything is encompassed in this, and he reinforces that with everything between a time to give birth and a time to die. So all of these seasons, all of these times happen within that context, for sure. Yes. All right, so number 2. Are there any apparent connections between each of the times listed in verses 2 through 8? That's what we've already been talking about, but let's expand on this a little bit. What other words could we use to describe the seasons that Solomon is listing here? So we might be given an opposite, but if you could give me like a one word, what's that season? Describe that season. Okay, yeah, like from birth to death, that's the whole life, the season of life. But then we get smaller and smaller, right? There's a time to weep and a time to laugh. Okay. A time of plenty and a time of less. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to try to repeat that. You're saying, is it like going from phase to phase in our Christian walk, our Christian maturity, almost like Christian in Pilgrim's Progress, like a leg of the journey? Yeah, that's a good way of thinking of that. Yeah, and Kayla and I are in a season, we love saying, we're in a season where we have young children. That's certainly a season. We're not going to have young children forever, right? So there's actually some beauty in that. There's some good times, there's some bad times. Again, there's some irregularity in this, too. There's some complexity here. It's not just a simple yes, no, good, bad. And I think this also reminds us that there's various seasons to life, which is very important, because if you're in a season that you just can't stand, that season's not going to last forever. You're in a season. Teenagers, you're in a season, aren't you? You're in a season where you're kind of learning how to be an adult. Kayla and I would like to call you guys practicing adults, right? You're learning how to bear up under the responsibility that your parents are giving you. You're also limited in your freedom. And so you might be like, I can't wait to get out of the season. But God gives us seasons. Okay. Number 3. What might be significant about verse 9? Let's zero in on verse 9 here. Any ideas? Why am I pulling this out? Yeah. Okay. So all of these seasons that he's talking about, they make sense when we lean on God, but if not, then it's worthless. Okay? Okay. Any other thoughts here? God blesses us for our labor and our efforts. Okay. Yep, this is a repeat of 2:22. So if you turn back to chapter 2, verse 22, there's a lot of overlap in these two verses. So the repetition alone, anytime somebody repeats themselves in literature, that's important. We got to pay attention to it. We got to notice it. So this is a repeat. So why is he emphasizing this? And why do you think it might come right after this list of seasons? Kathy. Okay. He's reiterating the fact that there is a time for every activity or purpose under heaven. Okay. Bingo. I think that hits it on the head. Right? We have little children right now, don't we, Matt? There is nothing I can do to speed that up. I mean, I might be able to kick them out on the street, but that doesn't make them an adult, right? I can't work my way out of that season. There's nothing I can do on that. I also can't bring the next season any faster. Right? I'm counseling some young adults who they're ready for the next season of their life. They want it to happen. They can't do anything to bring that any sooner. Right? So yeah, you can't work your way out of it. There's futility in these seasons too. You can't bring it. You can't get it out any sooner. Yes. All right. Question 4. What can we learn about the task that God has given us from this passage? The task that God has given us. Verse 10 is where I'm pulling that. I've seen the task that God has given the children of Adam to keep them occupied. So what do we learn about that task? Verse 13 says it is also the gift of God. All right? So the task is referring to even the gift here. Okay? Anything else that we learn about it? It's just a good gift? Keeps us occupied. Yep, that's fair. That's fair. I'm thinking of times where if I don't give my children something to do, they just become destructive and devastating to everything around them. Yep, they get bored and they just take it out on everything. Okay? Yeah? Any other thoughts here? So you might be looking right at verse 12 then, and specifically that word, the good life. Enjoy the good life. Well, what is the good life, right? There's nothing better for them to rejoice and enjoy the good life. He hasn't really talked about the good life yet. He's just kind of saying all lives are going to end up in the same place. But it does seem that he's teaching us how to enjoy the life before it passes, before it's gone, right? Or endure the life. Yeah. He wants us to see the good in every season, and then he also wants to help us endure the hardships of every season. My wife and I, we try to encourage ourselves in that way. In every season, there's something good, and there might be something hard. And it's good to have a little bit of both. Yeah. I think that I would also look at verse 14. There's this phrase, God works, and then there's a so that. That so that is very important. So that is a purpose statement. Why is God working? So that people will be in awe of him. People will be in awe of God. That word awe is very important. Can anybody think of another word that's similar to awe? Wonder, appreciative, reverence, respect. Yes, amazement. We could also say it's the fear of the Lord, right? Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So God works so that people will be in awe. They will start to be wise. And then in our last question 5, in verses 10 through 15, this last block that we've kind of been looking at here, I'm sorry I'm so zoomed out, what seems to be the main emphasis of this last block here? What's the main point? Why is he writing this paragraph? Any topic. Just throw out a topic that you see here. Eternity in their hearts. That's very interesting. Okay. So, all right, what else? Yes.
We should work because God worked first for us.
Okay. You see that in verses 10 through 15?
Yeah.
Okay. What else? That he has a purpose. Okay. Yep, that he wants us to enjoy the purpose that he has. Ian, is that what you're going to say, or do you have something more to add?
No, I was going to say that it shows God influence.
Okay, yep. We've kind of gotten our mind off of ourself from chapter 2, right? That was just filled with, and I. I'm thinking about myself. Now we're seeing the gift. It's the gift of God, right? I know that everything God does will last forever. However, God seeks justice for the persecuted. So now we're starting to see a little bit of perspective shift, right? I think the main focus is on this concept of this eternity in their hearts that we were talking about earlier. The eternal focus is what I would say is what we see in verses 10 through 15. Right? We do see that there's nothing better for them to rejoice and enjoy the good life. But I would ask this question. Why shouldn't I just enjoy the things around me? Why shouldn't I just be a hedonist and pursue the things that make me happy? That's what it seems like we're talking about here, right? Okay, that's the selfish life. Yep. It's temporary. Right. And so that's the contrast here. He's saying, yes, you could enjoy eating and drinking. You're going to need to eat and drink tomorrow, right? You're going to have to put in more effort tomorrow. So you learn to enjoy it. Yes. Right. At the very end, whatever has already been, and whatever will be already is, that whole statement is talking about God being outside of time. We have no basis on which that we can understand that. We have no framework to understand that. There's a mystery here. God is outside of time. He created time. He is as present in your past as he is in your future, as he is to you now, because God is eternal. This is what Solomon is trying to get us to see, is there's this eternal nature of God that makes every other little thing seem like just worthless in comparison. It's not worth my time to just spend on all these little things when God is eternal. There's something that lasts longer, right? And then right at the very end of this passage, you can begin to see the topic change for the rest of the chapter. Solomon is going to start considering the wicked and the judgment that awaits them. However, God seeks justice for the persecuted. This has been relevant for us today, hasn't it? There's a time to mourn, and there's a time to dance. And sometimes you're in a season that does not call for another time. Other times are not appropriate, and other times are. This is interesting. All right. I've got a few of the application questions here. I just want to read it while I've got a couple more minutes here to get you thinking about it. That way you don't leave without thinking about these application questions. I'm just going to read them out. Follow along. Think through your answer as you hear these. What benefits might come from thinking about our lives in terms of seasons? How can we use those times more wisely? Number 2, how much control do we have over the times listed in this chapter? How can we prepare for the changing of those seasons? Question 3, the good God gives good gifts. How is it a good gift that he put eternity in their hearts? What blessings can come from an eternal mindset? And then question 4, verse 13 says that it's a gift of God for us to eat, drink, and enjoy our efforts. Does this mean that we should just focus on what makes us happy? Why or why not? I think those are worthwhile for us to think about. Our students are going to think about that in just a minute, but I want to turn this over to James Barfield. I think we're going to join you guys for one prayer real quick, and then our students are going to head back over to room 17, if that's okay.